Welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries, where history is rarely dead enough to stay quiet. Tonight, we are going to the bogs of Northern Europe. Those wet, brown, breathing places where the ground trembles underfoot and the water is dark as old tea. A bog looks empty from a distance, flat, silent, innocent even. But beneath the moss, beneath the peat, there are people who entered the earth more than 2,000 years ago and came back looking almost asleep. The men cutting peat in Denmark in 1950 did not think they had found history. They thought they had found a murder. In the Bjelskovdal bog, near Silkeborg, a face appeared in the dark earth. Closed eyes, stubbled chin, a cap still on the head, and a cord around the neck. It was not a skeleton. That would have been easier. This was a man with features, with expression, with the terrible intimacy of someone who had only just stopped breathing. Sensibly, they called the police, but the dead man was not recent. He had been waiting since the Iron Age. We now call him Tollund Man, and his face is one of the most quietly frightening objects ever recovered from European soil. He had died around the 4th century before Christ, most likely by hanging, and yet the bog had kept the soft shape of him with an almost obscene tenderness. Someone had closed his eyes and mouth after death. Someone had laid him down as though sleep were involved. The bog accepted the gesture and preserved the lie. This is the first horror of the bog bodies. They do not look ancient in the way we expect ancient dead to look. Bone gives distance, dust gives mercy, but skin is personal, hair is personal. A line at the corner of the mouth can feel more accusing than any curse carved into stone. These people do not return as ghosts with clanking chains. They return as evidence, and evidence is much harder to exercise. The bog performs its miracle without magic, which is almost worse. Peat bogs can be cold, acidic, and starved of oxygen, and under the right conditions, decay slows into something stranger than preservation. The skin is tanned dark by the chemistry of the peat. Bones may weaken or vanish, while hair, leather, and flesh endure. It is not resurrection. It is pickling by landscape. The bog does not love the dead. It simply refuses to finish with them. Tollund Man's last meal was still inside him. Modern research found that he had eaten a simple porridge with traces of fish, perhaps 12 to 24 hours before he died. That detail is almost unbearable, not because it is dramatic, but because it is ordinary. A man ate. A man walked, or was led, to the bog. A man died. Then 2,000 years later, strangers looked into his stomach and found the last warmth of his human day. Not all bog bodies are as peaceful in appearance. Grauballe Man, found in Denmark in 1952, carried a different sort of silence. His body is among the best preserved ever discovered, but his death was violent, almost certainly an execution or ritual killing. The details are not necessary to dwell upon. What matters is that the bog kept not only the person, but the question around him. Was he punished, offered, chosen, discarded? The earth answers with skin, but not with motive. Across Ireland, Denmark, Britain, the Netherlands, and Germany, the same uneasy pattern repeats. Bodies placed in wetlands, bodies weighted, folded, bound, or arranged. Some may have been criminals. Some may have been outsiders. Some may have been sacrifices made at the border between human land and something older. The bog was never just mud to the people who lived beside it. It was a threshold. Neither lake nor field, neither solid nor open. a place where the world itself seemed undecided. A fine address, I suppose, for the dead who had not quite been explained. The Irish bog bodies discovered in the early 21st century made that threshold feel political as well as sacred. Some scholars have connected them with ideas of kingship, boundaries, and ritual power. Near ancient territories and symbolic hills, the dead seem to have been placed where land, rule, and sacrifice met. This interpretation is debated, as all good darkness should be. Archaeology is not a science. It cannot force the dead to confess. It can only gather what the bog has not eaten and ask why anyone would put a person there in the first place. There is a modern discomfort in all this. Museums care for these bodies with seriousness, science, and restraint, but the viewer still feels the trespass. We look at a human face that never expected us. We examine a body that belonged to a world without our languages, our laws, or our permission. The bog bodies fascinate us because they collapse time. For one awful second, the Iron Age is not remote. It is lying under glass, wearing the expression it had when the light went out. And perhaps that is why they frighten us more than skeletons. A skeleton tells us death is old. A bog body tells us death can wait. It tells us that the earth has preferences, that some graves are not endings but storage. The people who placed these bodies in the wet ground may have believed they were sending them somewhere. To the gods, to punishment, to the borderlands beneath the moss, but the bog did not send them on. It kept them for us. So when you next see a bog, do not think of emptiness. Think of a library with no shelves. Think of a mouthful of black water. Think of a place patient enough to hold a secret for 2,000 years, then give it back with the face still attached. The horror is not that the dead return screaming. The horror is that they return quietly and we cannot stop looking. Like, subscribe, and tread carefully. Some ground remembers what it swallows.